Chapter 5 of It Happened in Egypt. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. It Happened in Egypt by Charles Norris Williamson and Alice Muriel Williamson. Chapter 5. The Café of Abdullah. "Well, you got away from them all right?" began the man with the green turban, when, according to his roundabout instructions, I met him an hour later at the café he had named, one of the principal resorts of Cairo, where Europeans can consort with natives without attracting remark. The real dragoman came and took them off my hands, at least the realer one than you, a dreadful creature with a game eye, who murdered your messenger last night, and gave me your letter and induced the ladies to engage him on the strength of it. No wonder they want a looker to take the taste of him out of their mouths. And you certainly are a looker in that get-up. Now kindly tell me all about it, and everything else." "That's what I'm here for," said Anthony, running a matchbox to earth in some mysterious Arab pocket. "But hold on, Duffer. Something you said just then may be important. Is it true that my messenger didn't give you the letter?" "If you'd hung about Shepheard's Hotel 10 minutes longer, you'd have seen the fellow who did give it. Bedr el Gemály he calls himself, Armenian Mussulman, a sickening combination and an awful brute to look at. Said your messenger was taken suddenly ill, pretends to be a dragoman." "What is he like?" "Rather like a partially decayed but decently dressed goat." "Don't rot, this may be serious." I described Bedr el Gemály as best I could, feature by feature. When I had polished them off, Anthony shook his green turbaned head. "No portrait of him in my rogues' gallery. Just now I'm sensitive about spies. Over-sensitive, rather. Of course you've spotted my game?" "I confess I was conceited enough you'd think you'd given yourself all this trouble with a costumier in order to take a rise out of me. But when you speak of spies, I begin to put two and two together. Your business in Cairo, the powers that be, keeping you from me last night, etc. I suppose it's an official job, this fancy dress affair?" "Yes. In my own capacity I'm not in Cairo. I turned up day before yesterday, jolly glad to get back from Adrianople, though it was good fun there I can tell you, for a while, and I looked forward to wallowing no end in the alleged delights of civilization. I reported myself and all seemed well. I took a room at Shepheard's where you and I had arranged to meet, and when I'd scrubbed I strolled over to the Turf Club to see what the gay world would have to say to a fellow in disgrace. Only silly asses swallowed that newspaper spoof. Everyone in London who knows anything about you was betting his boots that the story had been spread on purpose to save our face with Turkey." I couldn't resist interrupting his narrative to this extent. But Anthony merely smiled, and watched a long-lived smoke ring settle like a halo over the head of an Arab at the nearest table. He was not giving away official secrets. But I was sure, and always had been sure, that he was a martyr, not a rebel, in the matter of the Balkan incident just closed. What the public were led to suppose was this: that Captain Fenton had asked for 2 months' leave from regimental duty at Khartoum, in order to spend the time with a relative who was seriously ill in Constantinople. That instead of remaining at his relative's bedside, he had used his leave for a dash to the Balkans. That this indiscretion might have been kept a secret had he not capped it with another, a flight with a Greek officer in an army aeroplane, which had ended by crashing down in the midst of a Turkish encampment. What I, and friends who knew him best, supposed, was that the leave had been a pretext, that Fenton had been sent on a secret mission of some sort, and that he was bound to take the blame if anything went wrong. Aeroplanes have the habit of other fierce, untamed animals. They won't always obey their trainers. Thus Anthony and his plan had both been upset. Or had it really been premeditated that he should fall into that camp? The remainder of his leave was cancelled in punishment, and he had been recalled to Egypt to be scolded in Cairo before proceeding to Khartoum. "Queer how many silly asses one knows," Anthony said. "Still, considering what a mess I seem to have made of things, fellows were jolly kind at the Turf Club. Nobody cut me, and only a few let me alone. Maybe there'd have been still fewer if there hadn't been a hero present who claimed attention, an American chap, Jack Dennis, who knows Miss Gilder and was telling the good news that she was on her way to Egypt. He called her the Gilded Rose, and said it was going to be a good flower season in Cairo and up the Nile. All the men, with one exception, seemed to have heard a lot about her, and to find her an interesting subject, and to want Dennis to introduce them. "I can guess the one exception," said I. "Can you? Well, I don't read newspaper gossip about heiresses. Thank heaven I've something better to do with my time." But the others wanted to meet her, or pretended to, perhaps to chaff Dennis, rather a cocky youth, though I oughtn't to say so, as he was nice to me, according to his lights. He got Sam Blake to introduce us, when he happened to hear my name, and went out of his way to pay me compliments, which I dare say he thought I'd like. When there was a lull in the discussion of what could be done to make Miss Gilder enjoy herself in Egypt, chaps suggesting trips in their motor cars or on their camels and a lot of rot, Dennis remarked that I was the only man who hadn't chipped into the conversation. And hadn't I any ideas for entertaining the Golden Girl? Naturally, I said that I didn't know who she was, and I had never heard of her, and even if I had, entertaining girls wasn't in my line. They all roared, and Dennis wouldn't believe at first that I didn't know of such an important person's existence, but the other men rotted a bit, and described me to him according to their notions of me. So he let me alone on the subject, and having plenty of other things to think of, I forgot all about it till the lady in question introduced herself this morning. Then, well, it struck me as rather amusing at first that I, the only one in the crowd who hadn't made plans to get at her, should have her trying to get at me. That was partly why I came up on the terrace when she beckoned. Partly? For purely intellectual reasons I'm curious to know the rest. I suppose it had nothing to do with her looks? As it happened, my cynical friend, it hadn't. I've got eyes in my head, and I could see she was pretty, very pretty, though not my ideal type at all. That little sprite of a woman in fawn color, the one with green eyes and a lot of black lashes, is more what I'd fall in love with if I were frivolous. But apart from the funny side of my meeting with Miss Gilder, or Gilder, it popped into my head that I might make her a victim in a certain cause. Don't ask me to explain yet, because there are a lot of things that have got to be explained first, or you couldn't understand. You were right, of course, when you thought I'd stationed myself in front of Shepheard's to take a rise out of you. I gave up my room there yesterday, for reasons I'll tell you. But I knew you'd be in the hotel, and that you'd be bound to show yourself on the terrace in order to go out. I wanted to see if you'd recognize me, and to have a little fun with you if you didn't. By the way, I'm not pleased that you did. It's a poor compliment to my make-up, which I may tell you has been warmly praised in high quarters. Well, you see, I apologized, I knew you were a nailer at that sort of thing, or you would have never got to Mecca and earned your green turban. I knew you'd been pretty often called upon to disguise yourself and go about among the natives for one thing and another. And besides, we were chums before you had the shadow of a mustache, so I have an advantage over the other Sherlock Holmeses. But even as it was, I couldn't be sure at first. You must have got some fun out of my expression. I did. I took revenge on you for recognizing me by tormenting you as far as I dared. Dear old boy, I knew you'd see me through to the end, bitter or sweet. Which was it? I inquired. Mixed. The girl riled me, rather, so much that I definitely decided it would be fair play to make use of her as a cat's paw. But it depends on you, whether she's to lose or win her bet. If she loses, I get her hat. If she wins, I've engaged myself to procure for her your green turban. Do you think you could, without my consent? No, I distinctly thought I couldn't. But I would have been willing to bet the head in the turban, served up on a charger, so sure was I that you'd refuse to come near her. I thought I knew you au fond, you see. You do. I haven't changed. But circumstances have changed, and that brings me near to the stage of this business which concerns you and me. First, before I go further, though, I'll tell you a part of the reason why I'm sporting the green turban. There's been the dickens to pay here, about a new street that had to be made, an immensely important and necessary street. Well, they couldn't make it because of the tomb of a popular saint or sheikh was in the way. To move the body or even disturb a saint's tomb would mean no end of a row. You remember or have read enough about Mohammedans to know that. What to do was the question. Nobody'd been able to answer it till yesterday, when the sight of me reminded them of a trick or two I'd brought off some time ago, by disguising myself and hanging about the cafes. They wanted me to try it again. Consequently, Captain A. Fenton received a telegram and had to leave Cairo at once on business. He gave up his room at Shepheard's, and the only regrettable thing to the official mind is that the fellow'd been seen about town even for an hour. However, it couldn't be helped. Luckily, Ahmed Atoun is not unknown in Cairo cafes. He's made quite an impression upon the public